Today's guest is Louise Van Der Bill. She's a UI and web specialist at Pure UI, which is her own consulting firm focused on user interfaces. And as she talks about WordPress to SharePoint to custom apps to whatever's next, right, on the frontier that needs good UI and good design. Thanks for joining me, Louise.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So for those who have not had a chance to meet you, get to know you, talk about yourself. Talk about where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
So I'm from South Africa. I'm currently in Cape Town. What I do is in my current position, I am a WordPress person. I'm taking projects that either get handed to me or I create them on my own. A lot of support, a lot of breaking barriers because I'm using technologies that should never be mixed, aka Microsoft mixing with WordPress, which is always interesting. And then on the side, I am a co-organizer of the MS Doug user group here in South Africa. And I also have the honor of being part of the Samsung Future Innovations Lab cohorts as a support helper.
Oh, wow. So rolling back the clock a little, in South Africa, do you have primary school, high school?
So yeah, we have primary school, high school, and then university. We don't have that lovely college little 2 years of figuring out who you are. You pretty much go straight into university. In my case, I did 1 year. They tried to teach me COBOL. I was like, no, I'm out. And did my MCSD in 1999. It was VB6 merging into VB.net. It was a petrifying time.
No. It was the time of COM objects. It was the early stages of what was going to become object-oriented programming.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I'll always forever miss because I felt like I owned my own little piece of code. This and that. But anyway, I discovered I really suck as a developer, so I became a front ender.
So since you skipped the school and you got your MCSD, was that enough then, or are you constantly having to be on a learning journey?
I think if we stop learning in this particular industry, we die, we become irrelevant. In my case, I've done a lot of my learning. Someone will bring me a problem and I have to learn a whole technology or a whole way of doing things. And then I got very frustrated about 3 years ago with being the only one in my family who didn't have a degree. So I got a degree in user experience, but my focus has always been the prettiness, what you see. Someone else can make it work. I'm going to make it awesome to work with, basically. And that's how I started to form my career around it. I became a support developer who blended herself into what we call hit squads in South Africa. It's a group of developers who are on the difficult projects, the problems that arise at 2 o'clock in the morning when a server blows up, that sort of thing. So I became highly reactive, but my passion has always just been the code, the design, and the building of user-friendly things.
So how did you find that first job, right? You got your certification before or after that?
No, so I had my MCSD, and I actually went as a bright and sparkly, bouncy 19-year-old. I rocked up at Dimension Data's offices to have lunch with a friend, and I walked out with a contract. How it happened was I was walking past a couple of the developers' monitors, and one guy had an error that I'd had 2 days before. So I showed him how to fix it. And the one manager saw this, and they needed an intern junior. So yeah. So I started as a web designer at Dimension Data. Then they realized that I had a coding and development background, and we're talking the early 2000s where developers hated designers and they did not talk. So I became this beautiful middleman where I would take backend code, black and white, New Times Roman websites, and I would take the designer stuff and I'd actually create the HTML, the CSS, and put the two together. And that's when I found my beautiful niche where I felt, I still get shivers when I actually get to do stuff like that. It's for me, it was just in my happy place has always been in the code of a front end of a user interface.
Wow, yeah, 2000s. There were a lot of really bad websites in the 2000s.
Oh, don't get me started. There's still a lot of bad websites out there, but we're working on it.
So then, going through that type of career, because I'm a more of a back-end developer. I didn't like to do the front-end stuff. Certainly couldn't make it pretty. That's not my skill. How does that work as you're building your career? You know, how do you pick where to work or where you want to work?
I never, I've got to admit, I don't think I ever made an active choice. My apex of moving into SharePoint was I was working for a company. I got handed a SharePoint 2010 site. I got handed a design and told to make the two happen. And I ended up hacking V4 of all things because there weren't those great YouTube videos. There were no courses. I mean, SharePoint had literally been released maybe 3 months before. And that's when I started to really, really rip things apart and put them back together again. And that's when I found, again, another niche, which was making SharePoint not look or work like SharePoint.
Hmm.
And SharePoint will always be my first love. It really, really will. I fashioned an entire company around it, where I used to own a company called SharePoint Experience, was the user interface and the user experience of SharePoint. So I had the chance to work on some of the biggest companies' intranets and build them and put them together. And it was a great time to be alive. It really, really was. Going from 2010, watching the growth of a technology to now where we are now, which is they don't even need a user interface person. It is so easy. But it's going to be great to get back in there, stuck back in there soon, hopefully.
Although I would say, I've seen a lot of SharePoint websites. Certainly, the modern interface is gorgeous all by itself, but people still want to make things blink and do stupid stuff.
Yeah, and companies always like to have their logo and their colors and everything else. And for an well, I say entry level, some of the SharePoint sites I've seen, I just they make it stand up and beg for treats sometimes. There will always be a need to make something unique, regardless of the technology. And I think that's where someone like myself can really start to flex, is in that space.
Interesting. So then what was the kind of rationale for starting Pure UI?
So Pure UI, I decided to go out as a full-time contractor. I have a rather interesting, I'm just going to say, way of working, whereas I don't sleep very often. So I'm awake a lot, and I found that if I was a full-time contractor, I didn't always have to work with one client. So like currently, I work with South Africa, I work with America, and I work with Australia. And so also I now have the ability to choose what I work with instead of being handed something and being told to work. But I'm also incredibly lucky that I do have a reputation in the industry where I get things done. Regardless of the time, I get things done. And I think I'm very grateful for that. I've had some incredible people support me in this. But starting Pure UI allowed me a lot of flexibility, which a full-time job wouldn't have allowed me.
No, definitely. And then how is that then, having clients in different time zones?
Well, I thoroughly enjoy it. As I said, my my fiance is actually American, so I'm awake and regardless. But before working with me, you do kind of get a introduction into Louise, where I kind of explained how I work, and I've yet to have a major problem. I think the biggest problem I ever had was I fell asleep for 2 days, and one of my clients thought I was dead. So now I've learned to send emails before I crash.
So you've had an interesting career and you're working in an interesting space. I don't talk to a lot of people who I talk to people who do customer experience, like human-centered design, but not a lot of UI design, right? That's just the next stage of taking that information. What are some things, or what's something you've run into that you looked at it and went, man, I wish we did that differently. It's not the way I would do it. It's not maybe the most efficient thing we do in our field or in our area. What's something you've run into?
So in my case, it's I appreciate and a user experience specialist. I really do. I find that their ability to merge a user experience into a mobile web, taking it, everyone expects, one sort of corporate identity or one feel and user journey to be the same across everything. There are very few people who actually understand the need to blend the technology to the interface and the user and the device. Xbox is a beautiful example. If you have a look at the Xbox shop on the actual Xbox versus on a mobile versus, they actually went and they separated the projects out to say, this is the device, this is the user, this is your audience. And then they separated, and that was, for me, I wish, well, let me put it this way, I can't wait until I'm able to do that. Everyone, you can't carbon copy user experience and user interfaces.
That's true. Yeah, right. You have your touch interfaces, you have your small, the same font won't work, but the graphics are too big.
Fold. Oh, fold. Oh, that is so. I came against that this week, and someone showed, actually, because you have your emulators and they're pretty cool. Someone actually showed it to me on a Samsung Fold, and I questioned my exact existence at that exact moment. I just, whose bright idea was that? Honestly.
Well, but there will always be a design. Next thing you know, it'll be somebody putting a mini screen on a Raspberry Pi and saying, "Hey, how come your website's not working on here?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's like saying, why doesn't this website work on a Nokia 3510? Anyway.
And before we started recording, you were talking a little bit about some education things that are going on in Africa that you thought were very interesting.
So I'm very lucky. My mentor is Alan Peed. He is a longstanding MVP, and he is part of something that which is a Samsung sponsored something called the Future Innovation Lab. It's where they take 30 students. They have to apply. We're now doing hackathons. We're talking about kids who have never seen a laptop. Their phones are 10 years old, and he takes them from Hello World, using Word, how to do things, and 6 months later they code their first app.
Wow.
And it's just beautiful to watch these young minds, and for me, one of the most special moments was, and it always is watching someone get it. Just that, and these kids have, like, I teach them how to do hex colors. They teach me how to appreciate and live my life, because they've saved me more than I've ever saved them. But watching what's possible and watching the young blood, like, I have no qualms about my country. I don't, because I've seen what's coming, and I'm just going to stick it out till then.
Oh, that's always that's always a beneficial experience, right, for both you and the student, when you get a chance to help somebody who's doing something that's just crazy amazing. You're like, how are you catching on so quick? How are you, right? Those of us who have grown up in technology, it's always surprising to me when my kid got it faster than I did on something.
For me, it's just how flipping privileged I was. My mother was one of the first computer teachers ever in this country. So we're talking the good old days of Logo. And so by the time I was 10, I was helping her with her lessons, let alone. So, I mean, I was a professional gamer when I was 18 years old, and we're talking back in 2000. And then watching again the other side of the fence, and these just beautiful kids who are just being given an opportunity. They're getting paid to learn, but my God, are they earning it? And it's just, they're wonderful kids. Every cohort that has happened, there's been a lesson for me to take on. And also from a mental health point of view, being able to have people wanting to talk to you because they know you'll sit there and listen. I've learned to listen because of these kids, because I don't shut up and I don't listen very well. And as I said, they're teaching me a lot of lessons I should have learned a long time ago, but I'm learning them now.
That's awesome. So what's next for you? What's next for Pure UI?
So Pure UI, I'm really hoping to. Pure UI is just kind of, it's a name I gave myself about 20 years ago, because they said, what do you do? Oh, I just do pure user interfaces. And in South Africa, people struggle to separate the two. So I have I have a URL called .ux just to kind of blend the two, in pure desperation more than anything else. But I want people to start realizing that user interface is a complete beast on its own that inhales everyone else and everything else from a technology space, where UX is that side, dev is that side, and then you got UI, which just goes and plays in all the spaces. And we're only starting to realize that now in South Africa. But I'm hopefully going to be there on the apex of that. I want something to make incredible. You know, when you have done everything you can for as many companies as I have, there are very few sites in South Africa which I haven't at least helped with. I want the next opportunity to be great and bring something mind-blowing to the internet. So I'm grabbing onto every opportunity I can, whether it be paid for work or not, no matter the country. I just want, as I say, that opportunity to really flex. So that's what I'm looking for right now. But again, I am finding it interesting because I'm having to learn Azure, infrastructure, cybersecurity, Cloudflare, SEO. Who thought of that? It's just I started off as a developer, a designer, and now I am a one-man army who gets called on at the weirdest times. But yeah, I really am just looking for that next. I want people to go, oh my God, that. And I haven't had that in a while, so I want that.
That's awesome. And you're amazing. People love it when there's somebody who is a Swiss Army knife and can do it all and can help explain it, speak in the language they understand, and put it out there. So I just look forward to seeing what that is, and I can't wait for that next big thing for you, Louise. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hopefully one of your listeners goes, oh my God, I've got something for her, and bounces along. But yeah, it's as I said to you earlier on, it's a great time to be alive in our industry. And I'm watching with bated breath, watching everything from Microsoft Designer through to Power Apps to ChatGPT, which we're not getting along at the moment, but I'll healthily respect Skynet in her infancy, and just seeing we're almost at that beautiful point of singularity, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again, and can't wait to see what happens.
Me too. Thank you so much.